What is up, Lorcana fam? Robbie C here, and welcome to another deck tech video inside of Lorcana. And I'm going to come out the gate. I think this is the most competitive deck that we've ever talked about here on the channel. And I will go ahead and say that the deck in its entirety belongs to Southside Gaming's Ghosty. Had a chance to play it, and I wanted to showcase it to you guys because I think that one thing that's happening inside of the Lorcana space right now is that people have certain avenues in order to get their content from. And if I happen to be an avenue that you're getting your content, there may have been a world that you just missed out on this deck in its entirety. So wanted to go ahead and once again give credit to Ghosty for coming up with this version of the one and only Chernadogs. Chernadogs is an aggro style deck. It has popped up inside of the meta. It is the Sprite build or the Lemon Lime, and this deck is meant to go fast. It's meant to win fast, and it has a lot of variance to it in the way that Ghosty's built it. And I want to show you some of the experience I've had with it, as well as talk about some of the focus points that I've been using with it, and also give an alternative because this deck does come in on the pricey side, and we'll get to the breakdown and the chart at the end of the video. Have a couple ideas and alternatives that definitely make the deck a little weaker, but 100% make it way more on the affordable side. So wanted to talk through those options real fast. One of the first things that you're going to notice about this list is the fact that it is 60 characters. That's right. There are no actions in the deck, which actually will take it to being one of the weaknesses later on. Is removing things can be very difficult if people start generating answers. This is an aggro deck, so 100% usually you're just trying to do your game plan, win the game as fast as possible, and if they start interrupting and interacting with your game plan, then things go downhill really fast. The second thing that you're going to notice about this deck is the fact that it has 15 uninkables. A fourth of the deck is uninkable. That could generally lead to some dead hands or some stuck hands, and it can create some really big inconsistencies. But we'll talk about the mulligan briefly because I think there's two major focus points that if you take those routes, it's going to help you have some clean games and some really fast opportunities to win games even on the draw, which inside of Lorcana is statistically very difficult. So looking at the cards, one of the first things that you're going to notice about the deck is that there are 21 drops inside of the deck. That's right, 21 drops. We have 4 copies of each of these cards. So let's talk about what they are. Starting with the uninkables. We have inside the uninkables, Cursed Merfolk is going to be our first discussion point. It is a 2-lore 0/1 quester, and when this character is challenged, they discard a card. You want to be playing this on turn 1 before they can really get set up and start turning it sideways and gaining that lore as fast as possible, so that if they trade into it, they're going to lose a card, sort of stall their game plan later on, or they have to burn removal to remove the card, which is also going to slow them down and cause them to either not quest or things of that sort. So it really soaks up a lot of pressure. Cursed Merfolk really shines. The second is going to be Daisy Duck. This is probably one of our strongest openers inside of the deck. To play Daisy on turn 1, whenever this character quests, each opponent reveals the top card of their deck. If it's a character card, they put it into their hand. Otherwise, they put it on the bottom of their deck. Against a deck like ours, if we also run it in the mirror match, this is wonderful because every time Daisy quests, it's going to reveal a character and put it into our hand. That can be super beneficial. Daisy, absolute rock star. Games where you can get 2 or 3 daisies on the board are games that generally you end up winning. Now, the last one drop that's unequal that we'll talk about is Lady. While you have a character named Tramp in play, this character gets +1 lore, which means that she goes from questing for 1 to questing for 2. So if you open up and you have our 2-cost Tramp in hand and you don't have a Daisy or a Cursed Merfolk, she's also a great option to play on turn 1 because on turn 2, you're going to be able to play a Tramp and she's going to start questing and getting that double lore effect right off the bat versus playing them together on turn 2 where she takes a turn off. Once again, this is if you don't have either of these options for our turn 1. Now, another thing that we want to look at is that there is a ton of easy removal in the game in the world of Steel. Something like Lady, if they open up with a Bell or they open up with a Shift Diablo, they can sing something like a Let the Storm Rage On, which deals 2 damage. Both of these characters are going to struggle. So we answer with 4 health 1-drops. The most common one that's really shined is Nala, the Mischievous Cub. She is a 1-cost 0/4 and she's inkable, which is really great. The 4 willpower is huge because it makes trading into her so difficult. She only quests for 1, but a common 1-drop that we're trying to face in the Sapphire world is Bell. And with Bell, she only does 3 damage. So it's going to take 2 turns or 2 characters in order to get rid of Nala. And they really set up a great character later on. Now, Ghosty talks about he loves this card. He thinks it's really great. If only there were more copies of it. And that's where Little John pops in. And yes, you will be saying Lil Jon more often and saying yeah and your what's in your head if you start playing this card too often. It has the same exact stat lines as Nala. It's also vanilla. It just accomplishes the same thing. Now, the last one drop that we'll mention is actually a 2-drop, and that is Tramp, the Enterprising Dog. This card is one of the rock stars of the deck. Tramp, Enterprising Dog. If I have a character named Lady in play, pay 1 less to play this character. So essentially, it becomes another inkable 1-drop. So we actually have 6 times 4. We have 24 1-drops in the deck. The other really cool part about Tramp that no one expects, whether it's in the beginning of the game or later in the game, is that when Tramp enters the board, you may give a character +1 strength for every other character that you have in play. So let's say this scenario. We've got a Daisy down on turn 1. On turn 2, we play Lady, and we play Nala to the board. So not a huge questing opportunity, but we know that Daisy's going to quest for 2 right there. They have to answer it. If they don't answer it and they don't get rid of it efficiently, then on the next turn, all right, we are presenting 2, 3, 4 lore, which is big, but we can go ahead and answer, because if we ink another card, things of sorts, we can play a Little John, we can play a Cursed Merfolk, we can play Tramp, the Enterprising Dog. This allows us to essentially play, like I said, 3 1-drops. This comes in as a 1/3, but what it also does is it allows us to give a character 5 strength. So suddenly on turn 3, between Nala or Little John, Nala got played the turn before, she's a 5/4 that gets to swing into something and take out a location. She gets to take out an Alice that's warded and has 4 willpower and is really tough to eliminate. Really, really powerful plays can be swung. And later on in the game, if you go even wider, Tramp just hits harder. People are never ready for the sudden boost to strength that you can give people through Tramp. Now, the most expensive card in the deck is going to be Rapunzel, Gifted with Healing. This is a card that if you have any interest in ever playing Amber, one of the best things I can do is advise you, open your packs, you come across an enchanted and you decide to sell it, I would slowly start acquiring your Rapunzel, Gifted with Healing sets. When played, you can remove up to 3 damage from a character, draw a card for each damage that you remove. So a card such as Nala, Daisy, or Little John that have 4 willpower, you can trade them into something and take up to 3 damage to get maximum value on the Rapunzel. Now, Rapunzel herself is a $50 card, and she's basically been at least a $50 card the entire time that Lorcana has existed. But once again, we'll talk about when we get to the budget section of the review, we'll talk about her specifically and a couple alternatives, because literally just 4 copies of her adds $200 to the price of the deck. When we talk about the 2-drops, that's really where the flex spots come into this deck. As you're looking at this deck list, there are a couple ones that I want to really highlight. The first is going to be Ursula Deceiver, when people can use removal to sort of get rid of you, such as a Be Prepared and Ruby, which wipes the entire board, or removal songs that can exist. Ursula Deceiver, being able to slot her in is only 2, is going to really help protect your board, because you don't need a lot of turns to win the game, but those big wide board wipes of songs can be devastating. And if you can remove songs are one of the biggest holdups of this deck, is because people get cheap removal to sing a song and then they can still use their ink to play threats to the board. And what you can realize is that people are slowly answering your threats and they're developing a board without having to necessarily eliminate your board. And because of that, you'll look up and realize that, hey, they have more characters and they start questing for more, which is where I think a card like Gogo Tamago really jumps in and shines, because we're going to be inking to basically 4 or 5 every single game. And when we get to that 4 or 5 mark, Gogo can come in and really help us get that reach and that push of a big trade. They've sent one character trading in at all times, or you can play like a Tramp, buff a character up, and then send that character into a larger health character, things like that, and then make a good trade. But I want to close out by talking about 2 combos inside of the deck that are really what drives this, and the biggest one being Chernadog. Chernadog revolves around these 2 cards. We have 4 copies of Tramp, the Street Smart Dog, and we have 3 copies of Chernadog, simply because it's uninkable, and in most every game, we're not really trying to play more than 1 Chernadog. We're trying to win the game off the back of 1 Chernadog to really add a threat. So let's talk about Tramp first, because Tramp is the one that sets the whole thing up. Tramp costs 1 less for each character that we have in play. He's one of our larger strength characters inside of the deck, but also one of our highest willpower characters, and Tramp quests for 2. These are all good things, but really where Tramp shines isn't just his ability to be played for cheap, turns our Lady back on and turning her into a 2-quester, but it also allows us to use the second ability, House Pickings, which is where we draw a card for every single character that we have in play besides Chernadog. So we end up with a combo where we draw a bunch of cards. Well, the trick is you have to discard as many cards as you draw. So why would we do this? Let's say that we have a hand full of these 2 drops or 3 drops that are more text-specific answers to help answer the board, but we realize, hey, we have the opportunity to just go wide here with a lot of low questers. What you can end up doing is you can draw into several cards, and then you can discard and sort of reshape your hand in order to get back to those 1-drops or things that you're looking for. But it also is like throwing gasoline on the fire that is your discard pile to bring out the big bad Chernadog. Chernadog, for each character card in your discard, you pay 1 less to play this character. And when you play this character, shuffle all character cards from your discard into your deck. So after we talk about the last combo that I think is one of the neatest ones inside of the Mulligan, that's where I want to highlight gameplay of really us hitting this combo on stream. It was a blast. So we talked about fixing your hand, the idea that there are 15 inkables in this deck, so you can get stuck at times. So looking at Yzma, the exasperated schemer. So like what Chernadog is trying to do, but on a much larger level. Really cool about this combo is that we have a card such as Lilo, the escape artist, who at the start of your turn, if this card's in your discard, you may play her and she enters play exerted. She quests for 2. Zombie Lilo is affectionately what the community calls her. She wants to be discarded because we still access her in the discard. We're looking at our hand and we're choosing to be a little more greedy with, let's say, something like multiple Daisy Ducks or multiple Cursed Merfolks. In our starting hand, there's a chance we're going to end up with a lot of uninkables because you could send off for the Mulligan or the altar and end up with 2 copies of Chernadog in your hand. Well, no problem for what we're trying to accomplish, because on turn 2, we can play the Yzma. We can willingly discard the Lilo, and we end up drawing into hopefully better options. Let's take a look at the combo real fast. I was drawing against a blue steel deck, a lot of gas. They have a Tamatoa on board, so I know that they're threatening and getting around the corner, but I was able to, with just 5 ink, make a play that's this big. Draw for turn. Okay. We're going to spend 1 for Cursed Merfolk. We'll spend 1 for Nala. I'm going to keep these guys separate. Spend 1 to play Tramp.
You pay 1 less for each character, right?
Yeah. And then when you play this character, draw a card for each character you have in play and then choose and discard that many cards. So I'm going to draw
6.
Yeah. 6. We will then play Chernadog. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We play Chernadog because 1 less for each character, and then we shuffle them all in. And then we'll spend 1 ink to play Daisy. We'll spend another ink to play Daisy. And then we will quest for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then pass. What? What is this? We put 12 lore on the board in 1 turn. Not to mention we already had 7 lore on the board. Holy moly. All right, let's talk Mulligan Guide real fast. Obviously, we want to have a lot of 1-drops in our hands. We want to be looking for the Rapunzel. We want to be looking for the Daisy Duck. And we want to be looking for basically any other 1-drops. We have the discard Dig Deep setup. We have both of the Go-Go Tamagos. Not really a great card to see early. And so we're going to go ahead and know that we're sending her off. What do we have here for 1-drops? We have the Lady and the Tramp combo. So we know that this works really well for us if we want. The Nala, fine if we had the Rapunzel, but this is where we have to choose. We want to go for the Rapunzel, be a little more aggressive, and we only see 3 of our 1-drops of the 20 that are existing in here, and this isn't even one of our 1-drops. So we only see 2 of our 1-drops, so we know we've got a good chance of drawing into more, but we also were looking for that Rapunzel. So here I would probably actually ship off all of these options and want to make sure would ship 4 off. And I know that I have a good turn 1, turn 2 play here. So I'm going to keep these because this also allows me to keep an inkable and still have that. Ship 4 off. What did we get? We ended up with Donald Duck, and a Cursed Merfolk. So that's totally fine, is that we would end up inking 1 of our Donald Ducks, and then we would probably play the Cursed Merfolk because it really shines earlier in the game. On the next turn, we draw into a Daisy Duck. This is phenomenal. We are cooking with gas, so we'll go ahead and ink 1 of the Nalas, and then we would probably play these two right here. Quest the Cursed Merfolk if it didn't die, things like that. And you can see as this is coming along, the Kate Cloud Kicker, we now are getting answers to what we want to see. Now, in that first one, we didn't see the Rapunzel, so I would have been sweating a little bit. I would have been nervous, but we had a lot of gas. Obviously, in these faux scenarios, we don't have a view of what we're playing against. Here we've drawn into the Rapunzel, so we're feeling good. We have two Yzmas, we have a Little John, we have a Lady, so we know we're going to keep the Rapunzel because we like that. I don't mind having this. I like having the Little John as well because it sets up. It's most often they're going to ignore your Little John because it takes a little effort to trade into a Nala or a Little John, and so we can set up some trades later. I would hold on to probably the Lady, maybe, because we want to have some draw power potential. We'd hope that we draw into one of the tramps, but I could even see a world that we send the Lady off looking for a better one drop. But at the end of the day, I don't mind this, and so we'd probably hang on to her because we know that we've got more gas around the corners. We've got really great options here. If we're on play, obviously we end up, this is where you got to pay attention to that uninkable count, right? Because we end up here with 4 uninkables in hand, and we want to make sure that we're not inking one of these. So this Ursula would go to the discard, and then we'd probably have to choose between starting off with one of these. I'd probably start with the Cursed Merfolk. Obviously can't quest it yet, and then here we're just hoping we draw into an inkable, right? So we'd probably ink that Little John as he came in, and then we would end up playing, my guess would be 2 4 health characters here. If we think we might draw into, I could see a world that instead of playing the Little John, because we know that we want to draw it next turn, we play one of the Ladies. That would help because that also keeps us having an inkable just in case, because we can get some trades out of Daisy. We'd quest for 2. The next turn, bank. So now we're looking at some really solid options. We probably just continue to play 1 drops to the board and do that for 2. And we're still inking because we're trying to get to the Rapunzel. So let's talk about this chart and see where things sit. I mentioned budget option. If you play this deck in the competitive variant with the Rapunzels in there, it comes in currently at $263. Remembering that literally 200 of that is the Rapunzels. Unfortunately, and the competitive side, it's going to start on the pricey tier, which is our first pricey deck that we've done. But I want to talk about 2 quick budget options that take us out of the chart and bring us into the sort of reforms. The first is going to be looking at Julieta Madrigal as a budget replacement. We mentioned her in one of our earlier videos when we were getting into Lorcana, and I think she definitely answers sort of that drop, that spot. So certainly something you can look at if a budget is a problem. That'll drop the deck straight from pricey all the way to budget very, very fast. The other option that my friend Andrew came up with, because we're playing an aggro deck, and I think that it's important to understand that when you're playing aggro, you don't really care if your opponent ends up with cards because you're trying to end the game on turn 4, turn 5. Them being able to draw a card isn't really a big drawback, and that's where Donald Duck, Perfect Gentleman, comes in. He is an uncommon from set 2, and he, at the start of your turn, each player may draw a card. You're going to be drawing 2 cards while he exists on the board, and often your opponent probably isn't going to try to get rid of them until later on, just because even though they quest for 2, they're enjoying the free card draw as well. So it's certainly a good card to look at. It's only 14 cents. If you buy the foils, they're 41 cents. So you could buy, 100 foil Donald Ducks and you still haven't bought 1 Rapunzel. I would definitely say a budget upgrade. In terms of tribal, this is going to drop to the nada for me. I think that it's tempting with the Lady and the Tramp synergy because of the fact that you have Lady and you have 4 ladies, 8 tramps. You would think, hey, this definitely at least is clicks. But then when you go down the character list and you're looking at everything else, none of it really seems to connect with one another. You have Ursula Deceiver in here. You have Go-Go. You have Little John, Cursed Merfolk. So like Ursula and Cursed Merfolk are from the same franchise. But Rapunzel comes out of nowhere. You have Pricky from Mulan. You have Lion King in here. We have the Chernadog. It's all over the place. So unfortunately, it's going to fall in the nada tier for me. I think that it would be one thing if there were a lot more clusters existing, but unfortunately. It's not a very tribal deck because we head over to the competitive side. And I do think that this is not only set champs viable, I think this is DLC viable. I think if you predicted that it's going to be a very, very Sapphire heavy meta where you're expecting a lot of these decks to take some time to set up, you can shock some people when you show up and you're ready to just run underneath them with this deck. That's one of the reasons I wanted to include it, is because it is expensive with the Rapunzels. It's definitely in our pricey tier. So like I said, our first pricey deck, but it is by far the most competitive deck that we have talked about here on the channel. So wanted to highlight it, and also want to ask you guys in the comments if you want to see these thoughts on more competitive decks and things like that. Like, I am a green steel player. I love green steel. I'd love to see what I'm looking at for green steel. Be happy to share. On the other side, you have the fun scale. Where does it sit inside of the fun scale? I'll be the first to admit, I am not a big fan of aggro. I think that aggro, the joke I've always made about aggro is that when you play aggro, you are going to spend more time shuffling your deck than playing your deck, it feels like, because you're trying to end the turn on turn 4, turn 5, turn 6. But I do think I'm a combo lover. I love a good solid combo. It's a rush. So as someone who loves a good combo, I love Whole New World, Jafar Wheel. I'm okay losing several games. I'm okay even leaning into an archetype that I may not enjoy as much, knowing that I get to hit those combos over and over again. I think about this compared to maybe playing like a Ruby Sapphire, where the deck is just so strong that you're expected to win every game, that it feels bad on the games that you don't win. And I think that one thing about aggro is you walk in knowing exactly what your win conditions are. If the game goes long enough, you're probably going to lose. And so there just comes a moment, and that's the only reason that I'm going to drop it from the dopamine strat down to the old trusty. And that's just because when things are cooking and they're going to be moving fast a lot of the time, it feels really good. But the games that you're going to lose, you know that you are absolutely dead in the water, you've got no shot, and you basically just have to watch your opponent slow kill you by just turning their cards sideways slower and slower, because you just haven't hit the gas fast enough in order to burn through and get the lore that you needed in order to win the game. So I just think that the combo aspect makes it the most fun aggro style deck I've ever had. I think about a deck that is a lot more like, hey, it's just a heavy curve and you're just leaning into the curve and you play the cards, such as last set I tried Kiwi Birds and I thought it was fun. I thought it was a cool idea, just not my form in the more aggro slotted decks, just because there wasn't really like a big aha moment that was happening. So for me, I love that you're looking for these one cost characters to go, and understanding that if a big Sisu hits the board, this lady right here, like it's just red gets set up, you're gonna have a really tough time. Still very fun, and it's a fun challenge to try to go underneath those big decks. It's gonna wrap it up for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, if there are decks that are competitive that you want me to take a look at, or if there are this fits. I know, once again, shout out to Ghosty for coming up with this. I loved the idea of Chernadogs on Chernadog, and I cooked a couple different versions myself, but when I got on this one and I saw this one, I was like, I just can't go back. It was really well made. I think it's like pretty optimized right from the get-go. So very, very exciting. If you're looking for something to take to your set champs, could be a really good one, especially if you already have the Rapunzels. You can get the rest of the card for $60 if you owned none of them. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Let me know what decks do you want to see next, and truly let me know in the comments. I was looking at the comments in the last one, but would love to do a starter deck upgrade next. You guys just let me know what starter deck we're looking at. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Please make fantastic for someone else too. But for now, we're going to leave you with the questing.